Hello everybody, welcome back to another stud story, and we're going to take you back a ways in this one, and back myself. We're going to take me back a ways in this one, and remembering this, but and I guess all of wrestling, all of anybody that was a wrestler's son probably experienced the same things that my brother and I did in school. If they found out your daddy was a wrestler, then and not the kids that were in your grade, kids that were your same size, but the kids that were in 2 or 3 grades ahead and much bigger than what you were at this point, would come to you and wanna find out if you could wrestle and if you could do what they did on TV and that type of thing. So I started encountering that basically in the 2nd grade of school, and thank goodness my dad wrestled as Buddy Fuller, and I went to school under my real name of Ronald Welch. So a lot of people didn't put it together for a while, but once you were in that school long enough, they began to figure out, I don't know how, but somehow your daddy is that wrestler, Buddy Fuller. And so the principal in the school knew it, and so did some of the teachers in my 2nd grade school. And I changed schools a lot. Went to the same school in my 1st year, and I went to the same school in my 2nd year. But in my 2nd year as a little boy, wintertime, out there playing on the monkey bars and whatever with all the kids like everybody else was. I was running around the monkey bars one day, and then the kid that had a black motorcycle jacket on, that's all I really remember, was running from the other direction, and we ran into each other, head first. And he got busted, and I didn't, and he started bleeding, and they took us into the principal. And nobody saw what happened. It was purely an accident. I certainly didn't do it on purpose, and neither did he, obviously. But when they went in there, he said that I did something to him. And so because my daddy was a wrestler, they took it from there, and they decided that, wow, that I had busted this kid's nose, and that he bled all over his motorcycle jacket, and I got thrown out of school for about 3 days, and so I experienced that. And then in the 3rd grade and in the 4th grade, we moved out to the farm in Loxley, Alabama, and that I have done some stud stories on. In fact, one of the last stud stories was done on that farm out in Dothan, Alabama. And at this point, went through the same process, except this is where students started figuring out that I was the son of a wrestler. And so, like I said, I was in the 3rd grade, but the guys that wanted to come, the students, the kids that wanted to have a fight or wanted to find out if I knew anything about wrestling or whatever, they were usually a couple of grades ahead of me and quite a bit bigger than I was. So I went finally and told my dad. I said, Dad, I'm having a problem in school. Well, what's that? And I explained it to him. And I think he right away grasped it because he was the son of a wrestler. And he had probably experienced it many, many years earlier. And so he says, okay, he goes, so what you're going to have to do, he says, is you're probably going to have to wrestle some of these kids, and he says, I'll teach you just a couple of holds. And he says, I think that'll probably be all you need to know. And he says, it's very simple. So he taught me how to get out of, and when you were a kid and wrestling and you didn't know anything about wrestling, every kid did the same thing when they wrestled. They either grabbed a headlock or they grabbed a front face lock, something that was very simple to be able to hold you and squeeze your neck and cause you some pain, and maybe that would be enough to make you give up or whatever it was. And so that was kind of the style and what happened during that time frame and with that age group. And so he says, I'm going to teach you, first I'm going to teach you one for a headlock. He said, most kids want to grab you in a headlock. And so he got me down on the floor, and he got on his knees, and he says, headlock me, and so I reached up and got him in the headlock, and he says, here's what you do. And he ran his hand between my legs, and he picked me up in the air, and he went straight back with me. And, he didn't let me hit the floor, didn't let me make contact with the hardwood floor that we were on, thank God, But I got the idea. And so he says, so he had Rob come in, my brother, and he says, all right, Rob, get a headlock on him. And and he told me don't drop him, to get him up in the air, but don't drop him. And so that's what I did. And that was my training, my first training of a shooting hold. And so a few days later, it didn't take long, because once these kids got to being hard with you and wanting to get into it with you, they came every day. So I remember the first one that came, and I had learned the hold. And so he got the headlock. I finally said, okay, yeah, well, go ahead, we'll wrestle, right? And so he said, okay, and then he gets the headlock. When he got the headlock, it was it was so easy. It was exactly like my dad said. I crouched him in between the legs, I picked him up in the air, and I just fell straight back with him. First thing he hit was the back of his head on the ground. Wow! I mean, it was like, that was it. Boom. He said, he laid there. He cried. He started crying. Oh, he said, well. And I was like, wow, geez, that was pretty good. That worked, right? So, and I got to be pretty good at it. In fact, I was probably 3 or 4 kids into the deal. I'd probably hurt 3 or 4 kids before the principal came to me, and he says, hey, what's the deal here? He says, your daddy's a wrestler, I know that, but what are you doing here? So I went back to my dad, but that it didn't stop. I continued to get this into the 4th grade, into the 5th grade. It continued on. And when I changed schools, I got into another school. I had a bunch of kids get me in a front face lock. Wasn't a headlock, and I didn't know what to do. So I went back to my dad in the 4th grade, and I said, Dad, I got a problem now. I've got students that are coming, and they get me they get me in like this. They get my head down, and they get their underneath, and they got me around. My head's down around their stomach. Front face lock. Get you in a front face lock. That's it. Yeah, Dad, a front face lock. And he says, very simple. Show you what to do. So he got the same deal. We were in some room somewhere. It might have been carpet at this point, thank goodness. But and he says, get me in the front face lock. And I did. And he just put his hand over my head, wrapped his hand over my head. And then he put his other hand down between my legs. And he DDT'd me, basically. Which is a great wrestling hold, that's for sure, and a great finish. But basically, he dropped me on my head. And then he had Rob come in, and I dropped Rob on his head a couple of times. And so I go to school, and I think it was a few days later, same problem I'm having now, different school. But they figured out that my dad's a wrestler, and they're all making the challenges, and they're bigger kids. And so first one that came along, bang, he got me in the front face lock. And when he did, boy, it was just easy, man. I was like, wow, here I go. And I throw the hand over his head and I crouched the leg, and bam, I drop him head first, right on the top of his head. And he's screaming and crying, and that happens 3 or 4 times that I get taken to the principal again, which is the way it worked. And he wants to know, what did you do to him? Well, he wanted to wrestle, and he got me in a hold, and I got him in a hold. And so what was really great about it, though, was that the first thing I learned about shooting was that it's not that you know how to use a hold. You have to be able to get somebody in the position to use the hold. And I found out that with headlocks and front face locks, that you could feed your head to them. and you could make it just so easy for them that that's the first thing they get to. So when you got ready to wrestle, I would stick my head out and they would grab the headlock or the front face lock. So I'd feed it to them and then I'd give it to them. And it worked out to be a great process for me. It's most unusual. I don't know how many wrestlers' sons that went through this. Ted DiBiase and Mike Graham, and you know, there's a whole lot of them. The Ortons, a whole lot of kids that grew up as wrestlers' sons. I don't know how they got that training, but that was the training I got from my dad. And it was basically the first shooting training that I ever got, and it took place usually from about the second grade up to about the fifth grade, sixth grade. And I think the next one I do, the next story I do, I'm just going to graduate on up to adolescent, and where he starts to teach me much more than just the front face lock and the headlock defense. And we'll be able to talk about things in bad positions that my dad put me into on purpose to make me realize that I could shoot a little bit. So, and thank you all so much as always for being here and for supporting us and having these opportunities to tell these stories. And the next one we're going to talk about is going to be shooting as an adolescent.